This is how your favorite deity will sound, Southern accent, whenever you get to wherever you're going. So, I can't believe y'all are here. Somebody's here. So this is a story. I got a story for you guys. A little bit technical, a little bit of story. I'm going to pick on Chad. Chad's sitting up front. I'm going to poke at him just a little bit. Because it keeps coming up, we got a canoeing crowd. We got a guy that actually builds kayaks, pointing you out. I'm a consultant. I work North River Geographic Systems, working with data, open source tools, and business supporter QGIS. Actually tried to support them. I used to, in the before times, way back when, which I'll talk about a little bit, I was a business partner with the big E, the big ESRI, and paid them a lot of money to be a business partner. And what I found now is that I can actually sponsor my favorite pieces of software for way less than I was paying to do that. So in the before times, I started a business and was having, just growing pains, learning what to do. And then through roundabout methods, this guy shows up, Michael Turner, and I end up in the Caribbean for a few months on the weirdest project I think I've ever worked on, probably to date. And what we were doing was laying out a 911 proof of concept, essentially laying out a brand new addressing system in an area that didn't have anything. They had some named roads, nobody really had an address, everything was parcel based. And so I went down, I know where I live, but do you know where you live? Do you know your address? Do you know? And so we set that up. And when I went down there, I was like fourth sub down, I think. And I start to leave and they go like, hey, we're gonna do this all in open source. And I'm like, what? Why? And it was PostGIS, I said OpenGIS, OpenJump. So you've seen OpenJump probably mentioned randomly. It's still getting released. I think they had a release not that long ago. I occasionally download it because it makes me feel warm and fuzzy. You too should download it and try to use it, and you will love QGIS just a little bit more. And actually out of that, now we forgot to put QGIS. That's how I found QGIS, because I got down there, I couldn't make a PDF. OpenJump doesn't let you print, which is amazing. They still don't let you print, and that's how I discovered QGIS. So come back, and I start kind of transitioning away from proprietary software into open source, and I was a ESRI trainer, so I started doing training QGIS stuff because nobody was really doing it. There was one guy, Kurt Menke, out in Albuquerque. He wrote a book. He's got Discovering QGIS, which many of you have seen. He was teaching it. I started teaching it. And I go to the 2018 FOSS4GNA North America, and I meet this guy, Chad, through another associate, Ed. He said, Chad's got a problem. And so I ended up going over to Chad's shop, and they had one or two copies of ArcGIS, maybe ArcView, ArcEditor, something, and it was like a sneaker net. So what they were doing is just passing around data, shape files, file geodatabase. It's doable. It's completely doable. People still do it. It still happens. It's not the best way because you happen to lose data occasionally, or maybe you've updated data. You're passing around data. What version do I have? Bad things happen. And so Chad wanted to move away from what they were doing. And the quickest, easiest way to do that was going into PostGIS. So we set up a server, loaded it, got everything set up, did some custom scripting, imported a file-based geodatabase. I was so happy. I'm like, man, this thing worked. I've made it. We did it in 3 days. We get all their 911 data. It's 911 data. I don't want to screw this up. We get it in, and as I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we're kind of building a base here. We've got a good solid foundation. We've got data in the database. QGIS is a client. 3.0 or 3.2 had just come out, like that big jump from QGIS 2 to QGIS 3, which if you weren't around for that, there was a major rewrite and it broke a lot of stuff. But the foundation they built with 3 is where we're at now. So I'm literally walking out the door, and Chad may not remember this. I'm walking out the door, and Chad looks at me and says, man, this is amazing. This is great. He's using his Mac, he's doing this, he's got a PC, and how are we going to send this to the state of Tennessee? And I go, send what? He goes, we upload data every night to the state of Tennessee. How are we going to do that? And I go, I didn't know we did that. What do you mean? I'm walking out the door leaving. What do you mean we're going to do that? So I had to call the state and go, hey, so I broke Henry County's, according to the way you guys do it with their Esri Enterprise system, I've probably broken this. And they were nicer about it than I expected, because one of the guys was kind of a closet fan of the open source way of doing things. We talked through it. I ended up finding out there's actually a standard. They produced a PDF standard that listed out all the columns, the definitions, the field types, all the stuff. Read back through that, and I actually luckily kind of got it right, just doing an import. And so what we ended up building at the very end, we were using Fulcrum, which they used to come to this. They're still around. They're still producing software, but Chad was using that to go out and collect address points. We would filter that through QGIS, check it for quality, shove it into the database. And from there, it was going out to Mango Map. It was going out to the state. He brought in an intern. He had his boss working. They had 3 or 4 people working at once, where before USB passing it around, everybody's happy. And this pretty much is the way it is. We've got GeoServer installed, but we haven't quite figured out what to do with GeoServer. I've got an idea, and I've had an idea for a few months on what we're going to do next. But anyway, out of all of that, Chad adds more data. They start finding data scattered all about the system. So Chad's got storm shelters, and there's he gets parcel lists, and there's town limits. All this stuff's important for the ESN layers, for the addressing system, and suddenly we go from 3. We're only supposed to have 3 layers, but now we have like 18 or 19 layers built into this thing. And so they've got a really cost-effective GIS just kind of running, and it's been running now fairly idiot-proof for 5 years. It hadn't broke yet. So when I sit back and look at this, that's all just kind of getting you to this point. This is kind of in phases. Phase 1 was make it work. Chad called me about 6 months later and said, hey, we bought a new server. And the nice thing with Postgres, you can just back the database up, get a new one installed, shove it over. And he was worried, how long is this going to take? I'm like, I don't know, 15 minutes, maybe. What's the IP address? Just tell me what the IP address is, and it's done. And so I sat on it for a few years because I really didn't know what to do with this thing. It worked. I was trying to encourage other counties to go to it. I'm a consultant. That's what I do. I go over hey, would you like to pay me money to, come in and do stuff? And in the meantime, I started improving it. And then I had this thought one day, sometime in 2020 when we weren't doing a whole lot of anything except sitting around, let's just shove it all into GitHub. And so I did. And I took all the scripts that I had done, shoved it up there. I am not a GitHub rock star by any means, or not even that great with SQL. A little bit, sort of okay with it, and I just put it all up there. And then this guy, Kyle Snyder, out of nowhere, just emails me. He's like, hey, can I help you work on this? Yeah, help me work on it. What do you want to do? And he starts refactoring all the SQL scripts and adding stuff in, making it a little bit better. And then we start testing it. I'd take what he's done, run it. And before it was taking me, a couple of minutes, it sounds like a long time, maybe 10 minutes to run a database, running various scripts. We got it down now to 30 seconds. We can build a new database, have it stood up and going. And he started doing documentation. We added a wiki to it. I've got to go back and fix some of the stuff in the wiki because that's even been changing a little bit. But it's fairly easy to, let's see. And it's just, SQL code. I've commented some of the code. I probably need to comment more of it. And we run one script, sets everything up. The second script builds all the data layers. The state's even been adding more data layers. They've added 3 or 4 more, which follow the NENA standard, the National Emergency Number Association standard. Tennessee's got its own standard, but it's aligning with NENA. So these two things are slowly starting to come together. And one day I get an email from the guy at the state. And he goes, hey, did you see this? this, and the NINA organization had put what used to be just a PDF document, they've actually built code and put it up in GitHub, and that gives me the Postgres code for the actual NINA standard, so I can now build it. And he asked me to port. We ported Chad's data over. That was a little bit more difficult than I'd planned on, because they had built a lot of QA/QC checks. When we moved Chad's data over, the state checks so much, and if they don't scream, we don't really fix it. We just kind of keep moving along. It incrementally gets better, but here it had to be right going in, which made me think, why don't I make mine more difficult, follow their QA/QC steps, and make mine more difficult to get data into? And so now I've been testing it with another county's data. But once it's in, it's clean. It's very, very clean data. It just takes, it may take a couple of hours of adjusting and getting stuff set up. What has also happened in all of this, one county over, so the other county I've been testing, they didn't want to go to a server. They just absolutely don't want to do it. We don't love servers. We don't want to do it. I just want everything sitting here in this file. And so they did it with GeoPackage. You guys have all heard GeoPackage, probably mentioned here to death. QGIS will do forms, so you can set up these trigger-like actions to to imitate like triggers and functions in Post. And so it works, sort of. Actually, I'm going to talk about this on PostGIS Day. Crunchy Data is doing PostGIS Day, and Paul Ramsey emailed me and said, hey, would you talk about this? I'm like, I can. I guess I can. And, the pros to it is it's a pretty quick setup. There's no database. I mean, you're running it off one file. It's not like the serverless or the just the streaming stuff we were talking about yesterday. It's fairly lightweight. It runs pretty quick. Everything's in one place. So we're storing symbology, the QGZ file. Everything's going in GeoPackage. The cons on this thing is that there's no database. We really need a database. GeoPackage is good. The database would be a whole lot better, an actual, legit thing. And it said the forms aren't as functional as triggers. And so what we had a problem with the other day with his data, if you make one edit and you've got 4 or 5 of these default, calculations built in, you make one move, 4 things fire. You move 2 things, 8 things fire. You move 4,000 things, and you've got like 7 or 8 of these things built in. It crashed his computer. He didn't have enough memory to run, and so it becomes memory intensive. So I don't really want to support that, so I'm trying to push him away from that. But the whole kicker is, even with all this 911 data, how does it go to the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch? And at one point, Henderson was using Easy 911, Chad's using ID Networks. This is stuff way beyond my pay grade, but there's a whole other software world out there that just handles getting emergency personnel to where you're located. And you can boo this, it's kind of funny, but it's all shape files. They take shape files, that's all they want, that's all they're going to get. So with Chad's data, we run an export every night, and that export creates a GeoPackage that goes to the state. It creates shape files that go to ID Networks or set up to go to ID Networks. And same thing with the other county. We run a script, produces shape files, and goes. And this was the script that was producing the GeoPackage, and literally it's 3 lines of code, OGR to OGR. So the script's been running for like 5 years. I mean, we had one upgrade because I think we accidentally deleted the install, and we had to just go back and reinstall it and change a couple of things. But for 5 years, this just runs constantly. What can you do that runs for 5 years that you haven't? You get an upgrade and it just keeps running. So 6 lines of code, you do GeoPackage and shape files. Now, the funny thing that happened, so I get a phone call 6 months ago, and it was from the Rapid SOS group, it's the other county. I had a 3-way call, and they go, hey, and so Rapid SOS, and Chad can fill you in. What was the comedian? It was...
911 could not give you a GPS location on a phone call. You could check in with Facebook and order pizza and McDonald's, and it could tell you exactly where you were. If you called 911,
from this,
the phone line could not pass the GPS collection longitude where you're at. So 2017, John Oliver, if you want to watch something directly funny, last week tonight, 911. Watch the whole show. That show fundamentally pushed the ship because he spotlighted how 911 was scary.
Yeah.
And so Randal Hale came to be that excellent. Everybody's talking here if it's at least 3 years old. Every phone has Randal Hale built into it. You even know it. When you call 911, Randal Hale fires. It opens every GPS app on your phone, grabs GPS data, and sends it to Randal Hale. When my phone rings, I already got a box on the screen saying you're going to receive a 911 call. Randal Hale shows it here. And it's within feet. So we have a woman who got kidnapped in Knoxville, put it back in her car. She called 911 for her phone, and they're watching her guy right down I-40 on her phone.
Yeah. So, and going back to Brian Toomey's talk about, the phone and the GPS location stuff, that's, how this works. And so the interesting thing was when we get the phone call, now I went through the heartache, the state Esri database, I had to call and do a mea culpa. We broke it. I kind of shamed them into using GeoPackage. And the Rapid SOS uses Esri's file-based geodatabase. Again, a proprietary package. But if you followed along with QGIS or anything else, QGIS will now export Esri file-based geodatabase. I don't really recommend working in it. Like, it's one of those things you can do, and I think it's a good pass-through, but it works. And so we were talking, they're like, you gotta use ESRI software to make this. And so we didn't. we did it in QGIS. I sent it to them, and I'm like, how does this look? And they were like, this is amazing. It's the best Arc Pro data thing. I'm like, okay. You didn't even know how it was. And so we sent one in, then Chad calls me immediately later and said, hey, this company is calling. They need a file-based geodatabase. So, we could set this up to run automatically to export. We would then have 9 lines of code for this script that runs every night, but it works. It would be really cool if we could stream a service to do this, but this has to be offline. It's got to work if, things go down. You got to have, the data has to be ingested into the CAD system, in case things happen. So we cheated. we used open source software to mimic a file-based geodatabase, and it worked. It actually came through. And so where does this leave this whole weird project? Like I said, shove it on GitHub. You can go up there and install it. You can go up there and work on it. You can write documentation, do stuff. This, like I said, Kyle Snyder's been helping me. Random people have been offering advice. And I really don't know what else to do to it, because we're at a point where maybe a QGIS plugin, maybe we build a plugin for this. We actually have a Tennessee addressing plugin. There were some tricks and stuff that we did in the Caribbean that would work out well for here. That would work. But the more interesting thing is the NENA 911 standard. The national standard has created PostGIS friendly scripts to do this. So we could pull QGIS down to the national standard to edit, attribute, fix data, and then going back to, I can deliver it with whatever, Rapid SOS wants. So it really makes the NENA standard just like we can use all the open source tools to do the work. The 911's are a little bit slow to adapt. They do what they do. I met a lady 3 years ago, and they were using ArcView 3.2 Excel, and I think it was a Windows 7 laptop, and they carried the laptop home every night because they didn't want to lose it, and that's what they did. And this would be so much better. And eventually Tennessee will merge with the 911 standard, so what we are doing will work. And so I'm calling this database 2.0. At some point, I got to upgrade Chad's system. I keep telling him I want to do it. I haven't gotten to it yet, but you can use it if you're in Tennessee. You can install it and run with it. A lot of states don't have a 911 standard. So you can go to, say, Missouri. Georgia kind of has one, but it's not centralized. Missouri has nothing. Kentucky sort of has one. You could use the Tennessee database if you were in a state that didn't do it, or you could use the NENA one now. So you got 2 options for doing it. And that's, I kind of want to start building menus for the national data set. You can build menus in QGIS, just little drop-down forms to do addressing. It would be pretty easy to do. not difficult at all. So that's kind of it. That's how we're we made it in Henry County. We've got another county doing it. We just got to find somebody else that wants to do it. Maybe we can kind of revolutionize the 911 data collection, addressing. And what would be really cool, since Eddie's sitting here for Crunchy Data, is to actually get this into the cloud, sort of. I mean, we got to figure out some way to do it. They've still got to have access to data in case an emergency or something else happens. So cloud, like if power cut, we would have to replicate the database or do something. But to get it shoved somewhere kind of out and safe. I mean, you're not in tornado territory, are you? Yeah, Tennessee is pretty much tornado territory now for the last, climate change. We never had a tornado in Tennessee. Like, I grew up, we heard about them, and they would tell us, you're never going to have a tornado in Tennessee. And climate change has now brought, 2011, we had 14 tornadoes. We went from 0 to 14 in one day, and it seems like now every other spring, we have one major tornado event in Chattanooga. And Henry County has, even up to December, which you should not have tornadoes in December. So, anyway.
The biggest problem with this is that the biggest problem with this, and Natalie and Stacy can attest this, Tennessee is so entrenched in Esri, and they put that footprint in there in the 911 world, that government people, when you start talking to them about changing to open source, the first thing they say is, well, what about support? We pay for support. We got to have support, right? We got to have support. I called Esri support 4 times frustrated. And I told my boss, I said, listen, if you're basing this off of us buying a support package, don't worry about it, because I can call him and speak to him in English better than I can call Esri and get, and just, it was so, that's the hurdle, is getting these people to understand the support package should not be the factor that makes you determine to get this.
I mean, the support's the community. And that's one of the things, too, like support is community. That's the one cool thing that we have. We're kind of 24/7. So you can, Chad had a problem. We filed a bug report. I filed bug reports before for various things. I hope to file a bug report for PostGIS one day, but we're getting there. But anywho, yeah.
What about next gen macro boards?